All right, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting today. I would like to call to order the Marketing, Service Planning, and Business Development Committee meeting of the North County Transit San Diego Railroad for March 19th, 2026. Before we begin, I would like to inform members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page that in order to make public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting by using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. You must also register with the clerk by sending an email to clerk@nctd.org with a name and phone number and which item you would like to speak on. So now I'd like to ask Taylor Siwi, help me again. Siwi, Deputy Clerk, to call roll, please.
Committee Member Martinez.
Here.
Committee Member Garcia.
Present.
Committee Member O'Hara. Committee Member Joyce.
Present.
This completes the roll. Committee Member O'Hara absent.
Okay, thank you. Taylor, now will you please provide us with the safety brief and review the evacuation procedures?
Yes. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevators. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building. There is a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you, Taylor. Do we have any public comments today?
No, we do not.
All right, before we get into specific items on the agenda for this meeting, I would like to outline the meeting protocols to make this meeting as efficient as possible. Please first, please hold your comments and/or questions until after the agenda item has been presented. And second, when the time comes for board member comments or questions, please raise your hand and I will call on you in order. All right, so we first have item number 1. The first item on this agenda today is the election of the committee chair and vice chair for calendar year 2026. Sahil Rodriguez, Director of Administration, will present this item. Sahil, you have our attention.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, MSPBD committee members. As we do each year, it is now time to elect the MSPBD chair and vice chair for calendar year 2026. Pursuant to Board Policy 3, the first meeting of the calendar year, which is today, members of the MSPBD committee will elect their chair and vice chair, and that person that's chosen today will also serve on the executive committee for the year. I will now turn to the committee to make any recommendations or nominations, and I'm here for any questions.
Hello, members.
I'll go this way. If you're willing to continue serving this year, I'd be happy to nominate your name.
Thank you. I would accept that, and I'd be happy to do that.
So I therefore move. Is there a second? I guess,
Second.
right? There we go.
All right, do we need a vote on that, or is it, okay?
Yes, we do need a vote. That is for chair, and we also need
Yes.
one for vice chair. We also need a nomination for vice chair.
Yes, so should we do them
Voice vote.
together?
We can do them together, yeah. You want to nominate next?
Member Garcia, would you like to serve as vice chair?
I would enjoy that. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll make the nomination then. Y'all are just doing a great job. This is a non sequitur, and my counterpart here agrees.
Oh, well, thank you, okay. So
Thank
we'll
you.
take a vote on myself as chair and board member.
Joyce made the motion. Do we have a second?
Oh,
I thought.
yeah, you.
I'll second.
Okay.
Our boards are always fun.
On the motion of Committee Member Joyce, seconded by Committee Member Martinez, to elect Committee Member Martinez as chair and Committee Member Garcia as vice chair of the MSPBD committee, motion passes. Committee Member O'Hara absent.
All right, thank you. Taylor, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay, so let's go to item number 2. The next item on our agenda is to review the 2026 proposed committee work plan. Mary Dover, Chief of Staff, will be presenting this item. Thank you, Mary.
Hi, committee members. So for the calendar year 2026 work plan, our first meeting is this meeting in March where you elected your chair and vice chair. You'll be receiving the proposed work plan. And then after, you'll also receive an update on the FY 2027 service implementation plan. The next two scheduled meetings are in June and September pursuant to board policy. At the June 18th meeting, it's proposed for you to receive a marketing and communications program update. We'll go over some recent campaigns on both social media and advertising, and do an overview of public outreach that we've been conducting in the community. And you'll also receive an update on customer feedback trends and initiatives. At the September 17th meeting, you'll receive an update on safety and security, and receive an overview of fiscal year 2026 service performance and trends. This is intended to be a preview of the annual topper that the full board receives every year. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah. My mic off for questions. I guess my main question is that these are our updates. I think as the committee, shouldn't we be making some recommendations to the board on certain things? I don't know, between now and June, if we can talk about what kind of marketing and communications program suggestions the committee might have, or how do we structure that if we don't meet again until June?
Yeah, so we can, the committees traditionally provide discussion, and then they provide feedback that the staff then incorporates into whatever item then goes to the full board. So we don't structure them as approval items or any action necessarily, but we do take the discussion to inform any items that go to the full board. If there are any suggestions from committee members on marketing and communications initiatives in particular, those can be conveyed to me or the marketing team, and we can certainly incorporate that into the presentation and to our initiatives moving forward.
Yeah, I'm not totally certain we've been asked that question before, just because it's usually discussion related to those things. That's something that we wanted to explore. We could totally do that. I mean, we could send out maybe sort of what our general plan is ahead of time before that meeting. And then when we get to that meeting, what we're really looking for is feedback on, are there pieces that we're missing from the marketing and communications piece? Are there other places that we should be? Last year, sort of in particular, was the first time we were really out in the community at that level. And so I think we've had some meetings with some folks in the community. I do think there are a few places that we have not made an appearance yet that we need to, and what's our strategy on that, and how are we trying to drum up some of those conversations? So we can probably get some information out to the group here so that you're armed with some of the information on what we are doing versus what maybe we should be doing, and then that can come back to June if that helps.
I would appreciate that too, and I really appreciate your recommendation. We have a fair, so it'd be nice to know how that is going to be
Yeah. That's happening?
marketed, yes. And then more importantly, baseball season's here.
Right.
That's the best part of the year. So it would be nice to have that ahead of time.
And I will note also that we're scheduled to have a board workshop in July where we'll be discussing board governance and the committee structure. So if at any point we wish to change the committee structure, we certainly can do so at that point.
Do we have a date for that yet?
It'll take the place of the July board meeting. So
at the board meeting.
July 17th, maybe?
17, 16, 18? 16?
I do have a question. When we come to discussing this, thinking about a little longer, long-term, does the board have like a 5-year, I'm trying to think, do we have like a 5-year strategy in place? Right, we do have one.
We
And does
do.
any portion of that deals with marketing come down to the subcommittee to deal with that, tweak that, recommend? So we're looking at, because I think what you're asking is what are we doing long-term, right?
Yeah, so that's a good point. We actually have 5-year plans around our budget and our service, but we don't necessarily have one for marketing. So I think that's certainly something we can look at.
I think that would be good.
I think it'd be great, and maybe consider putting that on our work plan, if everybody's in agreement.
Yeah, and I definitely think we want to hear from the cities on that, because historically, the marketing piece has sort of been buried in the nuance, and not because our folks aren't doing a good job, it just has not been a priority for us until probably a couple years ago. And so we really want to hear from the cities, like, where do you want us to be involved with, like, not just showing up for the Veterans Day Parade, or not just, how can we incorporate ourselves with, your economic development council, or how are we marketing to the schools that are in the district, or how are we having those conversations? So we need that feedback. And I think a 5-year plan on the marketing piece would be a perfect thing for us to do.
Good, thank you. Great. All right. Taylor, do we have any other public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay, so we already did questions. Anybody else have any comments or anything? Okay, so this was informational. We'll move along to item number 3. Next item is fiscal year 27 service implementation plan. Yoni Chulakava. How'd I do on that one? Oh, you would say that anyway, so. Can you
Very
say your
close.
last name for me?
Chulakova.
Yeah, okay, thank you. She's the Director of Service Planning, and she'll present on this item. You have our attention, and thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So the Service Implementation Plan, or the SIP for short, is an appendix that's included every year in our budget documents, and it's updated every year for the upcoming fiscal year. The document outlines all the monthly projections for the upcoming fiscal year, and it includes ridership, service miles, and hours for each mode, and it does include a 5-year projection, so it goes through fiscal year 31. The SIP is a document that every transit agency in San Diego County has to submit through SANDAG, and is developed in accordance to Board Policy 17. So our funding outlook does remain very similar to the previous fiscal year, in that there is significant uncertainty at the federal level. Projected apportions at the state and local level are also coming in lower than expected. Because of this, NCTD will not be able to consider any service expansions in the upcoming fiscal year. And without the introduction of any new or additional funding sources, NCTD will likely need to reduce service hours in future years. Youth Opportunity Pass does continue to be a really important factor in our overall ridership, making up 13.5% of our total fixed ridership in FY26. And it is currently funded through June 30th, 2026, but there are significant efforts to extend this funding for this project. SANDAG is currently conducting a fare change study that, if implemented, would impact the fare revenue and the ridership for upcoming fiscal years. So while there are no service expansions currently planned for bus service for FY27 through 31, NCTD is still looking at ways to increase capacity within the system. So one key strategy is the introduction of articulated buses, which would allow us to carry more passengers without having to increase frequency or adding new routes. These articulated buses are anticipated to enter service in late FY28 or FY29. However, as mentioned, due to the current federal, state, and local funding projections, no formal service expansions are planned for the upcoming 5 fiscal years. NCTD, for NCTD Plus, we will be submitting a funding request to SANDAG Flexible Fleets Program to support Fallbrook-Pala NCTD Plus zone in FY27. NCTD Plus is a valuable service, but it does come with relatively high operating costs compared to fixed route service. And because of this, any expansion of future NCTD Plus zones will be heavily dependent on external funding, including SANDAG's Flexible Fleets Program or external programs. In addition to funding availability, future expansion will be dependent on the operational capacity of the agency and overall system performance. For rail, so both Sprinter and Coaster, while there's no rail service expansions planned for the upcoming fiscal year in terms of number of trips, there are still important investments that will support system growth. One of the most notable is the planned Coaster Convention Center station, which is anticipated to open in FY29. This station is expected to be a strong contributor to increased ridership by improving the access to really key major regional destinations, as mentioned, Padres. For next steps for the SIP, we are finalizing the document with our finance team, which will be done by April 16th. The board will then receive an update on the budget document in May, with the final approval taking place in June. I'm open to any questions.
sorry about that. Do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay, about questions from the committee?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I guess it's a little bit delicate, but you mentioned the cost of NCTD Plus, and we currently have 2 cities that are receiving NCTD Plus. When are we going, what is our active review of whether or not that's something we continue? Because we've always talked about this as like, let's try it, let's see if it works. We weren't sure, whether or not it fits within our full profile, what we should be offering. We understand there's a gap, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're able to cover it. So I think from a standpoint of like equity, if you look at our cities, having it just be Vista and San Marcos, there's definitely some questions about equity, about people being serviced. And so I do want us to get to the bottom of like, is this something that we are going to continue to do? And I want to understand the numbers in a really complete way.
Yeah, we definitely review those. In fact, we look at them every year when we put the annual topper together. I will say, interestingly enough, in the case of San Marcos and Vista, they're probably 2 of the more robust and used demand response services that I've seen at other agencies. I think they were set up very specifically for that. I will say on the funding piece, part of what had concerned me, and I know we talked about this at the board level a little bit, but the agency started demand response service with essentially grant money or something of that like, without long-term funding sort of associated with it. And not that anybody guaranteed us there would be long-term funding. I think that's problematic when you try to implement new service without long-term funding built into the equation. And I think what we saw from that, like when we had conversations with San Marcos, we've had direct conversations with them about what their contribution to that will be if they want to continue that service. I will say both of those cities have seen a service reduction on fixed route to cover some of the cost of NCTD Plus. We've made service adjustments in those cities where we pulled parts of fixed routes back to accommodate the continuation of that service. I would say we've had questions about that from other cities that, if I didn't do fixed route but just did this, does that cover the cost? I think we look at those on a case-by-case basis where the fixed route is maybe not seeing that ridership progression that we want, and maybe there's a trade-off there because you get a bigger zone to sort of operate in. I do think at some point in time, the question will be had and is already being asked of cities that as that cost continues to rise, if you want the zone to be this big, if you want it to continue to be this robust, there's going to have to be some contribution from the city on that. It's the same conversation we're having about school service as well. We run a lot of school trippers that the school district provides us zero funding on. And, I understand that that's a, decent chunk of our ridership, 15% of our ridership is youth. But all of those conversations kind of fall into the conversation where if we have to deviate off of a main route and that costs us, $250,000 a year, like who's going to help us cover that cost? And NCTD Plus is no different on that. I don't know, Mary, if you have any other.
Yeah, I'll just add, so as Yoni mentioned at the top, without an additional funding source or additional revenues brought into the agency, we will have to look at our services as a whole. And so that could include NCTD Plus. It could include fixed route, as Sean mentioned. We're looking at what's the most productive, what's bringing in revenue, what's utilized by the public, and then we'll make those decisions as a board. To kind of further Sean's point, we have begun discussions with the city of San Marcos, and we'll start them with the city of Vista, explaining the challenges that we have with long-term funding for NCTD Plus, and starting the conversation, should we get to a point where we will have to make service cuts, NCTD Plus could be one of those services unless the city is able to provide us with some resources.
Yeah, I think the trade-off, I can give an example of like removing the 347 from the weekends in San Marcos and replacing it with NCTD Plus has proven to be a good utilization of services because we're really getting some of that fixed cost that I think we see decent ridership on during the week where we really don't get that on Saturday. And now people have a little more opportunity throughout the network to use. So there are cases within each one of those cities where there are places where we're seeing that consistent ridership and it does sort of drive the cost down. The ridership on both of those, interestingly, especially for only being in operation for a year or two, are much higher than some of the other cities I've seen put demand response in or some type of like a plus service. Vista ridership for only being out there as long as it has been pretty robust. It doesn't necessarily solve our cost problem because that just means we have to put another vehicle out there. But it's nice to see that trend because I would say 10 years ago, that was all the rave was we got to get demand response out there. It's the thing, it's the new thing. And then when people realized it was pretty expensive, they were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that. In this case, yeah, the cost is higher than some of our other modes. It's the highest cost out of all the modes we have, but we see these pockets of continual ridership that are popping in and new riders that are coming into the equation. And so that leads us to the conversation that, okay, now that your community's invested, how do you want to be invested with us so we can either protect the service or restore fixed route?
If you don't mind, just I'll wrap up.
Great question.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think I appreciate those answers, I really do. I worry that this will come to the board as like a fixed decision at the end of a road that we're all going down and maybe not realizing it. So I'd really like a robust conversation around this because there's no version of this where we're expanding this to all of our cities in the near future. So I guess, is that part of our mission? I just think like we really need to have that honest conversation about where we're at, given the funding, the first slide of this deck that talked about how we're on a cliff. You didn't say that, I did. And that we have real decisions that need to be like made with the full honest, accounting. So I know that there's trade-offs. I just think I haven't heard the board weigh in on like trade-offs of removing the fixed route, recovering some of the cost of the fixed route to these on-demands. I just don't think we've had that conversation. And I think it's a really interesting one that talks about like who we're serving and the function of what we do. So I just am asking for us to be able to have that conversation in full.
Yeah, actually, I think you make one of the best points related to demand response, which is, I think when I first came on board, the idea of demand response, I mean, I'll fall on the sword. I was not a big fan of it. I was very vocal with the staff about that. I had not seen it be ultra successful in certain places. And I think once you're committed, I think to your point, once you're committed, you either have to trade off or you have to find somebody to invest in it. Where I do think it does have a great value is long range, which in our current condition, we're a little stifled with right now, but long range, if we were going to have these high capacity transit corridors where there was 10 to 15 minute service, right? What it does is it opens the zone up to get people to the frequent service. So it starts to lower the cost down. And like our grid is kind of interesting because we've got all these sort of pocket routes. And at some point in time, they like trip over each other all over the place. Kind of like we talked about the 315, months ago. You get these sort of trip over routes. Really what you want is, is Vista Way our main corridor? And if it is, what does frequent service look like on that? And how does that connect to Sprinter? And sort of how do we have these connectivity pieces where they're more like circulators that connect to the main to get people where they need to go, right? Because if I could take one bus for an hour, or if I could take two buses and it takes me 20 minutes, right? That's a no-brainer. And so I think your question is absolutely spot on. Like in theory, years ago, I would have said there shouldn't be a trade-off. Either you want NCTD plus, and we figure out what that means as part of fixed route. As of late, it's been, look, I know you like the service. I appreciate that. Your city's behind it. To do that, we're going to have to make adjustments to these other things. And to your point, I don't want to get down the road where we're just talking about trade-offs. It either works because it's part of the network and we want to make it something different, or we get contribution to that when we say, hey, like, it's getting a little costly. Is the city willing to invest to try to either expand the zone or make some things? And we've had that conversation specifically with San Marcos because they would like to incorporate, I think, some of San Alejo Hills and a few other locations. And thankfully, the zone stops right at my house. So thank you, Yoni, for that.
So I guess the question is, have you found any interest with the city?
I think there's one other city that's interested.
Well, I was
Or
talking
the
just
city of
about
San Marcos?
Oh,
Yeah,
funding.
we haven't heard from any city.
we've had good conversations with the city of San Marcos. I think we're kind of going back and forth. We're furnishing some data about the service. We're managing some of the expectations of what could be expanded, making sure that we keep the service as efficient as possible without adding additional operator resources to it. We haven't by any means come to a number. I think they're ongoing conversations, but they've been fruitful so far.
Yeah, they're not diametrically opposed to it at all. In fact, when we brought it up, we thought they might say like, hey, thanks for coming today, 5-minute meeting. We actually had a really good conversation, and I think they understand, that this is something that works for them. It works for their citizens. For us, it's a little bit different because it's not a traditional fixed route where we have these sort of fixed points that we can work on driving ridership. And so they recognized that and said, let's have a real conversation about what that looks like for us. I don't think we've had a conversation with Vista yet, have we? Yeah.
Couple of things, 13.5 Youth Opportunity Pass ridership. Wow, that's impressive. And I'm really happy about that. And I see the impact that it has on our students. I have a high schooler, well, no longer high schooler, but last year when she was still in school in her senior year, wow, hundreds of kids getting off the buses. I'm like, all right, okay, it's a need that it's being met, and I'm sure there would be more. So good for that. I'm a little concerned that we keep having to do these yearly adjustments and looking for things that hopefully we can get to the point where we have partnerships going on that will help us have something more long-term as we look into that, because I think that's something that is completely necessary for our communities. The other thing, how much is that, by the way? How much does it cost us, our budget line?
For NCTD Plus or
For the
or for the youth
YOP?
opportunity? Well, we get, that's about $1.5 million.
Yeah, I think we get around $1.5 million. Sandag provides, I think, $9 million for the region total. MTS gets the lion's share because they have the most riders, but I can get you the official number.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say that's a great point to bring up, because one thing that, when I was at the TC meeting, we had this whole conversation about continuing the program, and I hate to be the naysayer in the room in TC sometimes, because I just feel like we talk about things at a 50,000-foot level, and I really appreciate Mario because he dives down into it, but I'm sorry, Sandag's Transportation Committee meeting that rolls up to the board. And so one of the conversations they were having was like, hey, we've really invested in the long-term YOP pass. The thing that has not, I mean, we've said it here a few times, but the problem is they don't have any operating money to give us for that anymore. So the first year, they gave us money that we could use directly for operating costs. So it goes right to our operating budget. You can use it to expand service or do something specific to operations. When they started to experience some issues with their intake, they moved it to either CMAQ money or capital money. So now essentially we're getting $1.5 million a year in capital money, which doesn't really help us when we need that $1.5 million in operating. Yeah. And so I don't have an issue at all, with how the program works. I think it's great. They should expand it. We try to make it very easy for students to get their IDs. We go to the schools. We do a lot of training. My concern is that when the first conversation came up about the capital money and they were like, what does the transit agencies want to do? I said, hey man, I can't be the face of killing transportation for children. Like I'm gonna get destroyed on that. And I said, so you've really kind of put us in a place where we really can't back off of Youth Ride Free because we've seen success from the program. Every year that program grows. We just need to find a way, and Mario's been really good about trying to solve that problem for us. But we need to find a way to get back to getting those as operating dollars versus capital dollars, because that's money that goes straight into helping us sort of manage what school service looks like, or connectivity to some of the after-school stuff. And, the students are a ton of our ridership, afternoon and mornings. I mean, they're the bulk of what we've got out there, and we want to continue that program. So I really appreciate you bringing that question up.
So right now, students rely on the pass. They don't pay any money, is that right?
Yeah, they get the pass either through us. I think sometimes they can get it through the school, and then we'll get them a pass.
So is there an assumption there that they can't afford to contribute even a small amount?
So in a past life, that's what we had. So we did all of the public school service for Cincinnati Public Schools. This was a long time ago. This was 15 years ago. And so we got about $7 million a year from the school district. And then the students got an ID from the school, and then they had a 50-cent cash drop. on every ride. So 25 cents if they were, Cincinnati was school of choice, so the network essentially could take them to a school district way out somewhere else in the city. So it's 50 cents if they were going out of their school zone, 25 cents if they were in what they should, within their, what should have been their school district. And that worked fine for a long time. I think as time went on, what we found is that if we were able to find a way for the school districts and/or for, like, in this case, a YOP pass to sort of cover the difference on that, truancy rates went down big time. And I think we've even seen it, and we've heard from some of the school districts here, that just opportunity regionally to the YOP has decreased truancy rates quite a bit. When you take that burden off of, I think, the parents who are probably likely already using our services as well, that's just one less fare they have to deal with throughout the day, even if it's at a reduced fare.
And the schools have no school buses of their own, is that right? So this is their school bus, but yet the school district doesn't contribute.
They don't, and, I don't want, not to beat them up.
And I don't
we-
mean to
I
do
don't
that.
think
I'm
we've
just
ever,
trying to get
no,
educated.
no, I'm saying from our seat, not to beat them up, we've never really had that conversation with them. And I know that they face a lot of different challenges between declining enrollment, what money comes along with that from the state, school lunch issues. And eventually, we're going to have a conversation with the school districts about, like, when we deviate these routes, when we build these routes that are specific to this ridership generation we see at the school, they're really to your benefit. We want to continue to do that. Do we need $60 million? No, but what is that reasonable conversation we're having in real time? And I don't think anybody's ever locked us out of some of those conversations. We just haven't officially gone to them and said, hey, this is a thing.
So that was my follow-up question. So for the articulated bus expansion, that appears to be based on need for school transportation, is that right? So meaning you're up to capacity and you need more space.
Occasionally, it's for school trippers, but we do see some on our regular fixed route services as well. We received a grant from the Federal Transit Administration to purchase new CNG buses, and so the purchase of the buses themselves is covered by a grant.
Yeah, the interesting space is we've got some fairly frequent routes that are like on 15-minute service. And moving that service to 10 or 5 is fairly costly for us. We add an additional 20 feet on the bus, and we're in a space where we can accommodate. Like right now, there are times of the day, and typically it's right around the time school gets out, or sometimes in the mornings, more usually in the afternoon, but where we're denying boardings, we have to go drop off only because we're at bus capacity. And we typically try to make sure that there's enough room when we get to the schools, because we know that's going to be an issue. But having the 60-footers sort of thoughtfully deployed along those routes will allow us to maintain 15-minute service, but have the capacity to not really go into drop-off only mode. And they're fun to drive. They got a big accordion in the middle, and y'all can come out and drive around a lot. They're actually easier to drive. People don't know, I think they're easier to drive than a 40-footer. A lot of bigger systems use them in neighborhood traffic because they're a two-piece. So when they turn a tight corner, it just trails the back end with it. 40-footer, you got to navigate the whole turn. They're actually a little bit easier to use in the system, especially if you're in neighborhoods. And I think our folks are pretty excited about seeing some on the street. We get them every day at ESCO. MTS has quite a few of them, and they use them on their shuttle bus out to Escondido Transit Center. So, they're not new to the region. We've got quite a few of them floating around here.
Well, great discussion. I'm glad we had that. NCTD plus, I have gotten some emails and phone calls asking about the interest of expanding into Escondido. And these were very specific groups of people that they said, it's really great for us because I'm representing a group of people that are limited in their vision, or they have no vision whatsoever, and to be able to navigate to a regular bus stop and things like that. Joe, could you please? I said, I'll absolutely raise the issue to let everyone know, because there are those smaller groups of people that really can benefit. And I did mention somebody that wasn't an issue. His was something else in Vista that happened to be a former church member of mine, and called me for something else and then said how great the service was. And I made a point to let everyone know that we're doing our job and we're limited of what we can do. But there are groups out there that do need that support. Thank you for continuing to try to figure out how we can help is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, Vista's probably interesting because some of it's geographical. Like a lot of places where I've seen this connectivity to a fixed route network through a demand response where they're look like a smaller kind of system setup is where there's geographical issues where people live there and could use fixed route, but probably don't qualify for paratransit. And so Vista's kind of an interesting example of that we have places that are literally within a half a mile, 3/4 mile of the Vista Transit Center, and they can't get down the hill to get to the transit center. And so now that we've put that service into the area, they have access to all the stores, they can get to the transit center, catch Sprinter. So the cost trade-off, there are benefits and/or reasons geographically why we do some of those things, but San Marcos is pretty standard. But Vista is a little different because geographically, there are some places we just can't put a bus. And whether that's neighborhood street size or whether it's in the hills, kind of coming down to the transit center. And so we've seen some good ridership jump up from that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I see you thinking, yeah. Good. I like your thinking.
I also noticed that we have some rebranding going on. And just as the marketing committee, I guess maybe if we have an update on if there's plans to do more rebranding or if, like what's going on with our brand. I don't know if that's something we could talk about in June.
Yeah.
Okay. It's an easy one, right? And then, so I'd ask my committee members, I really want to understand NCTD Plus as a function of how much it costs and consider the service trade-offs too. And so I look to you to see if you want to add it to one of our agendas that are upcoming. I also will pivot and open to, like, if this is going to come to the full board at some point too, I don't want to double book or create too much more work, so.
What do you think, Mary? I would like to learn more about it. I would like to know what it costs, what passengers pay, what are the typical routes, what are the trends?
Yeah, I think what we had envisioned for the board workshop in July was a discussion on board structure, but then also a high-level overview of services and where we can have that conversation about the different needs that each of our services fill in the transportation network in San Diego County. We also will likely have a conversation about the upcoming budget, the budget that the board had just passed in June, a 5-year outlook. So it'll be a very high-level strategic conversation with the board. We can have it at that, but we can certainly in June come back to the MSPBD committee and talk about the different services. Either one works.
Yeah, specifically Plus, I mean, we could come back in June with the.
Yeah, at some point, like a really deep understanding of Plus and what you were saying, like what do those typical routes look like? How much does it cost per route?
Would it include all of that? I mean, it seems like it's going to be something really important that we have to look at, so it would be great to understand it deeper.
Yeah, I would say we did something similar at the request of Director Contreras about one of I think it was a 6-month update on San Marcos, and we're only not too far into Vista, but by the time we get to the June meeting, we'll have plenty of data to sort of show the difference between the two, really deep dive into where we're seeing the pocket passenger at, who's getting on, where they're getting on at, how much that costs, how much the riders are paying, what their average wait time is, how does it compare to things that we're doing on the fixed route side. If there's anything else you want us to put in there, we can throw it in.
So I would like to understand too that it was basically a pilot study. So what was the goal of the pilot study? To see if the city would pick it up, to see if it could pay for itself, which I know it can't, so I know the answer to that. But what was the goal of the pilot?
Yeah, I think we classified it as a pilot just to see if it was something that the community would adopt. I don't think we ever assumed that the cities would pick it up and pay for it themselves. I think it was always something that we expected to have to shoulder within our operational budget. But the San Marcos pilot, we did see have strong ridership, as Sean mentioned. It competes very well with other demand response services throughout the country. And so that was factored into the decision for us to keep it.
I mean, for me, the bonus is if you're using that to get a passenger to another mode of public transportation, that's a win. If you're getting them to a medical office, medical appointment, that's a win. But at some point, it's more of a communal benefit than the greater good of the mission of public transportation.
So I think what I'll do is, to the work plan for the June meeting, I'll add an overview so that this committee can have a more in-depth understanding of NCTD Plus and how it interacts with our fixed route services. And then there will still be a conversation at the full board workshop, but it'll be more high-level and strategic. But as the service planning committee, this committee at the June meeting can get a more in-depth overview.
And if you see something in the meantime that you think, if you're just like, hey, I really want to know that piece of it, just email us and we'll incorporate it into the data.
Good?
So I will update the work plan and then I'll have Suhail send it out to the committee
Thank you.
after this meeting.
That's great. Anything else? How about you? All right. So we don't have, does anybody have any committee, any comments anybody wants to make or any report out? All right, I think that you do? I will. Oh, good.
I do these every week at council, right? And I said, we have a chance here, but I just got back from the National League of Cities in DC, and to let everyone know, I changed my flight so I could be here for this meeting. I had changed it to be here for the 2:00 meeting, and then when somebody scheduled this one for this time, I was like, I got to change it again.
Okay, so how
That was
long
me,
was
that
your
was my fault.
TSA wait?
Oh, well, let me tell you, staff made a mistake and booked my tickets under Joe Garcia, but my ID is Jose Garcia. Saturday, I spent 5 hours trying to fix that. They eventually just said, go to the airport 4 hours early and we'll see what we can do. So I had to do that both going and coming back. But I think everybody understands that. They need to book my tickets Jose Garcia, not Joe Garcia. But anyway, or I'll have to change my name, right? But anyway, I'm on the public safety and public safety and crime prevention committee, advocacy committee at the National League of Cities, and we work on things that provides an opportunity for us to be able to open further discussion. And I think there are issues of safety and public safety that we're not discussing in those committees. So I just want to say, I have a great opportunity to be able to bring this up at the national level because we're working this is an advocacy committee to work with that. So if there's anything that I can do, please let me know. I would be honored to be able to share what is it, and even in our own cities, right? What's going on in our area that we should discuss. So I wanted to share that I'm on a couple of other committees too, but it is a great way to impact at different levels what we do locally, because what we do locally really, really, really has an impact. Somebody said once, there's no Republican or Democrat way to pick up the trash, period, right? That's true. And so I think we're doing a good job. I got to ride I always, when I'm out of town, mostly is a chance for me to ride public transportation. So I rode the train from Dulles to downtown. And yeah, it's a long ride, but it was $2.50, right? So I was like excited, $2.50. When it's peak, it's $7.50, I think. But then on my way back, because of my name thing, I took Uber. I almost had a heart attack. $65. And I'm like, man, if it wouldn't have been because of my name thing, I would have got on the train again, right? So public transportation is absolutely a blessing. That's what I'll say. Thank you.
My friend Randy will appreciate the shout out. He's the CEO there at WMATA. So we'll see him on Saturday. I'll let him know that he's done a really good job of trying to sort of reinvent that system there. And the Silver Line extension to Dulles has been bonkers. It gives us another option when we fly into DC to talk to folks. Reagan's a little bit shorter of a train trip, but
I just read that LAX is charging $12 drop-off for any Uber or Lyft. That's just one way. That's going to be very costly, too. Well, I appreciate this meeting and appreciate all the input. We'll call the meeting to a close, and our next meeting will be June 2nd. All right, I'm glad to have you there. All right, I call the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. I think we gave it.